In the spirit of respect, authenticity, and reconciliation, the town of Slave Lake honors and acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional lands of Sawridge First Nation within Treaty 8 territory, home to Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples who have occupied these lands since time immemorial. Councillor Hughes.
Yes, we need to add an addition to the agenda tonight, closed session for financial under FOIP section 25.
There is a motion on the floor to amend the agenda as presented. Motion for the amendment. Any further discussion? Oh, call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Councillor Choba.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the amended agenda as presented.
Q, motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Councillor Adams.
I move that the special meeting of council dated January 16, 2025 minutes be adopted as presented. Yeah.
Perfect. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Councillor Choba.
I move to adopt the minutes of special meeting of council dated January 20th, 2025.
Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. That is carried. And Councillor Hughes.
I move to adopt the regular meeting of council from January 21st as presented.
Further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Perfect. We're going to move forward into our public hearing. I will declare that the public hearing is open, and I state that the hearing is held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider that the purpose of bylaw 01-2025 is to amend the land use map of the Municipal Development Plan bylaw 21-2007 by redistricting Plan 7520877 Lot R1 from natural environment and open space to regional commercial. The notice of the hearing was given in writing to the applicant, the assessed landowner or landowners and adjoining landowners, and the planning and development officer. Notice of the hearing was advertised on the town's website from January 14th, 2025 to February 4th, 2025. The presentations are to be brief and to the point. The order for hearing of the presentations will be the planning and development officer, those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. All persons giving presentations are to state their name and address.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'm presenting on behalf of the Planning and Development Office. So the purpose of this report is for council to hold the required public hearing. The proposal is to amend the municipal land use map of the municipal development plan by redesignating Plan 7520877 Lot R1 located at 201 14th Avenue Southwest from natural environment and open space to regional commercial to facilitate possible future commercial development adjacent to Highway 2. In accordance with Section 231 of the Municipal Government Act, Town Council has given bylaw 01-2025 first reading, and we are holding the public hearing this evening. Bylaw 01-2025 received first reading on January 14th, 2025, and the public hearing is being held tonight. Under the municipal development plan, currently the subject lands maintain a natural environment and open space designation, and as such, an amendment would be required to allow commercial development. Currently, under the land use bylaw number 22-2007, the subject lands maintains a P community in the land use bylaw district map, and as such, an amendment would be required. And an amendment to the MDP municipal development plan and the land use bylaw will run concurrently. The Municipal Planning Commission was to review the application at its February 3rd, 2025 meeting, but due to lack of quorum for the meeting, we had to cancel, and the MPC will be reviewing this application when the meeting has been rescheduled. The department did reach out to the MPC asking for any unofficial remarks or comments on the application, and prior to this meeting, we hadn't received a response yet. The public hearing for bylaw 01-2025 was advertised and referral letters were sent to adjacent property owners. To date, we had no written or verbal comments that were received. We did get a few phone calls more about asking specifically what it was about. No one had any objections or they didn't say they were for or against it. They just wanted more information. Originally, the parcel was intended to be developed as highway commercial, as previous designation had been in place for some time and aligned with other surrounding properties with regard to the use and density. In July of 2001, the council of the day considered an application with regard to the mentioned lands to dispose of the land's designation as a municipal reserve. At that time, council did not dispose of the designation and instead allowed an access road to be built across the lands and requested the zoning for the above mentioned lot be changed from C3 highway commercial to P community. This change was requested as the lands at that time housed the Tourist Information Center. On December 19th, 2001, bylaw 25, 2001 changed the zoning as requested by council. As a result, the municipal development plan and municipal land use map was amended to accommodate the zoning change. In late 2024, administration began the process of removing the municipal reserve designation on the land. And in December, the designation of municipal reserve was removed by motion of council, and administration is currently in the process of registering this all with Alberta land titles. The intent is to market the lands for commercial development, which will align with surrounding properties and meets good planning principles. Redistricting the lands will allow them to be marketed for this use. The rest of the reports for later. Any questions?
Councillor Adams.
Just wondering, this is more on procedure, I guess. Now that we don't have anything from the MPC, how do you normally move forward in something like this without having the recommendation?
So I did check. The Municipal Government Act says that council can confer with MPC. And then I also checked our own bylaw that says MPC may provide comment on land use bylaw amendments or statutory plan amendments, but is not required.
I think this was within, it redistricts to what is appropriate.
Sorry?
We're basically putting this in line
Yeah.
with the land use bylaw and then opens up possibilities as well. It's not supposed to be environmental reserve. Is this the same property?
It's not an ER. It's not an environmental reserve. It was designated as a municipal reserve.
Municipal reserve,
Yeah.
right. It wasn't
So-
ER, it was designated as the municipal reserve.
If it was an ER, we wouldn't have been able to remove the.
Right,
designation.
municipal reserve. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Choba. Oh, wait, actually, no. That is it. Hold on. Public hearing.
Mhm.
Sorry, this is on me. So there's no more questions for the planning and development officer. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will now call forward. The room is empty. Anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the bylaw? As I see none. Anyone that is opposed to the bylaw? Joe, I was a bit excited there for a second. As I see none, any person deemed to be effective who wishes to be heard? As I see none, well, now I will declare the public hearing closed. And we will move into the next public hearing. I declare the public hearing open and I state that the hearing is held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government 2000 as amended. The purpose of the hearing is to consider that the purpose of bylaw 02-2025 is to amend the land use district map of the land use bylaw 22-2007 by redistricting plan 7520877 lot R1 from P Community District to C3 Highway Commercial District. Notice of the hearing was given in writing to the applicant, the assessed landowner or landowners and adjoining landowners and the planning and development officer. Notice of the hearing was advertised on the town's website from January 14th, 2025 to February 4th, 2025. Presentations are to be brief and to the point. The order of hearing for presentations will be the planning and development officer, those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard, and all persons giving presentations to state their name and address. Now we will hear again from the planning and development officer.
Okay, so the purpose of this report is for council to hold the required public hearing for bylaw 02-2025, which is an application to amend the land use bylaw 22-2007. We want to amend the land use district map of the land use bylaw by rezoning Lot R1, Plan 7520877, located at 201 14th Avenue Southwest, from P Community to C3 Highway Commercial. In accordance with Section 230 of the Municipal Government Act, Town Council must give bylaw 02-2025 first reading and hold the required public hearing prior to passing a resolution. Bylaw 02-2025 received first reading on January 14th, 2025, and tonight we are holding the public hearing. In accordance with the municipal land use plan map for the municipal development plan, the subject land maintains a natural environment and open space use designation, and as such, an amendment to the MDP is also required. Again, the Municipal Planning Commission was to review this application on February 3rd, and that meeting was canceled. The MPC will be reviewing this application when the meeting has been rescheduled, and the department reached out to the MPC asking for any unofficial remarks or comments on the application and did not receive anything to date. The public hearing for bylaw 02-2025 was advertised on social media and our website, as well as postings were made at the location on signs. And referral letters were sent to adjacent property owners. To date, no written or verbal comments have been received. Again, we did receive a few phone calls, but they were just asking for information, not saying they were for or against this bylaw. Bylaw 02-2025 amends the land use district map of the land use bylaw by rezoning the above noted lot from P Community to C3 Highway Commercial. In July of 2001, the Council of the Day considered an application with regard to the mentioned land to dispose of the land's designation as a municipal reserve. Ultimately, the council did not dispose of the designation and instead allowed the access road to be built across the lands and requested the zoning on the above mentioned lot to be changed from highway commercial to P Community to accommodate the tourist information center that was on site at that time. In December of 2001, that bylaw was passed and the zoning was changed as requested by council. Originally, this parcel was intended to be developed as highway commercial, as previous designations had been in place for some time and aligned with other surrounding properties with regard to use and density. And in late 2024, administration began the process of removing the municipal reserve designation, which was completed in December of 2024, was removed by a motion of council. Administration is currently in the process of registering this all with Alberta land titles. The intent is to market these lands for commercial development, which would align with the surrounding properties and meets good planning principles. And if you guys have any questions.
No questions from council. I will now call forward those in favor of the bylaw who wish to speak. I see none. Those opposed to the bylaw that wish to speak. I see none. Any person deemed effective who wishes to be heard. I see none. I will now declare that the public hearing is closed. Okay, we'll now move forward into our new business. The reports from the public hearings are going to be just for council's information, the same reports in the new business section.
The same reports, and it just says you have the option to give second and third reading and enact the bylaw, or you could defeat the bylaw for 01-2025. The recommendation from the planning department is that we have no concerns with this amendment, and we recommend giving bylaw 01-2025 second and third reading to amend the municipal development plan.
Councillor Adams.
I do understand that we don't have too many concerns over actually turning this to a C1 over a P as far as council is concerned, but I do have a concern over not waiting for MPC. I feel that is an important aspect to our process within the community, and it's something I would like to keep going. As such, I think we should be delaying this decision until such time that we've heard from MPC and had their recommendation to give the public their opportunity to have their voice.
And that's an option. You can table this to give second and third reading. The public hearing has been held. It was still brought because the public hearings have a timeline, that specific timeline that they have to be advertised, and it's gone out to the public for this date to be held. But you can table to make your second and third reading at a later date. That's at your discretion.
Councillor Adams.
I'd move that we table bylaw number 012025 for the municipal development plan amendment, amending the bylaw to next meeting.
Sure.
And then maybe
February
we'll have to
11th?
table again.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on that motion to table the 01/2025 bylaw, second and third reading to next week? Okay, call the question, those in favor? And that is carried. And then our next report would be for the land use bylaw 02/2025. Counselor Adams.
Same comment. I would move
Yep.
that the application amend the land use bylaw 222007 redistricting bylaw number 022025 to the next meeting. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, so there's a motion to move the second and third reading, the report to come back on the February 11th meeting for bylaw 02/2025. Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor, and that is carried. And then if the MPC meeting ends up being scheduled after that, then we'll table it to the following.
I'll just remove it to a
Yeah,
different.
move it to
yeah.
the following meeting,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
That would be awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
We'll then move forward into our delegation. Is it an online delegation? I assume so.
Yes, it is. And thank you so much for allowing me to present. My name is Heather Tomlinson. And I'm a speech language pathologist with Alberta Health Services. And I'm here to present regarding our request for permission to install what's called a playground communication board. Could you just tell me if you're hearing me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just have a very brief presentation to make and then happy to entertain your questions.
Great, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Just trying to pull it up here. And then I just want to confirm that you're able to see the presentation.
Yeah, we can see it on the screen. If you could
Great.
make it a bit bigger, that would be great. There we go. That's perfect. Thank you.
Great. So what we want to do is install communication boards within High Prairie and Big Lakes County and Slave Lake. And our goal is to make our playgrounds more inclusive for children and adults with communication difficulties. So we've already gained permission from High Prairie to install on their property. The inspiration for this was this has been done in Montreal jurisdictions. And the rationale really is that children who are using communication devices in school are quite limited to being able to use them indoors. They're not able to take their communication devices on the playground because they can get lost and damaged, and they're quite expensive pieces of equipment. And these devices are used by children who have trouble with speech, with language, and other communication challenges. So the idea is that we would install a very large board, and I will show you an example in a minute. Right now, for example, there are 20 to 22 children who are in the Slave Lake School who are part of the High Prairie School Division who use communication devices. So, and then within High Prairie, there's 8 children who are using, 13 who would benefit from having the board in the playground. So I think it's also important to point out that I've mentioned the number of children who would be benefiting, but also we want to include also their communication partners. Each person, of course, has people that they will be communicating with on a regular basis. So the actual potential usage is much higher. So just to give you an idea of what the board looks like, the board is quite a large board, and it's got key vocabulary that would be relevant to the playground, but also other topics. And it's got bold keywords for people with visual deficits and individuals who are having trouble understanding written language. And then there would be instructions for the person using it and for their communication partner. So this is an example of what it would look like, the layout. And it would be quite a large board. This is an example of a child using a board in a playground. And the material will be made of metal, doesn't require any kind of, connectivity. It's meant not to fade, and it's supposed to be weatherproof and easy to clean. So it'd be similar to a street sign, quite large, 4 feet by 8 feet wide. And then the instructions, as I mentioned, would be on the board in terms of how to use it. We're also looking at having a bit of like a QR code that could be scanned with a mobile device for people to have an example of how to use it. So as I mentioned, it is for children who are having trouble with communication and who would benefit from having a more inclusive playground. And everyone, of course, would be welcome to use it. So including adults who, may have communication difficulties resulting from stroke or other conditions that affect communication. And it's really hope that by having them in playgrounds, it will help to just destigmatize the use of communication supports and devices in public places. So just make it a very common thing. So our request really is for permission from town council to install in Schurter Park in Slave Lake. I'm happy to take questions or clarify anything if you need.
Fantastic. Counselor Adams, what's your views?
My question runs around, you did talk about a little bit by putting it into a metal sign so that it has some longevity to it and some durability. My question would be who or how is responsible for cases of vandalism, spray paint, anything that may damage it, as far as that upkeep goes?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's one we've been asked before. I mean, I think the vandalism, it is, I guess, something we would need to discuss because vandalism certainly is always a risk with any public sign. What we do know is that there have been rare cases in the Montreal example that I used, and actually it's not hard to clean them. But yeah, I'm not sure what the answer is yet to your question about who would be responsible. I suppose that's something we would need to discuss.
Counselor Hughes?
Thank you. I was actually going to ask the same question, but just a comment from myself. I think this is a great initiative, and I'm really happy to see you guys approaching other parks and stuff in our regional boundary here. What would be your target deadline to have the sign placed and ready for kids to use?
Well, after the ground thaws, so we would probably, I think the fall would be lovely if we could have this done in the fall of this year or next year, but we already have the template and we have a graphic designer who will actually, develop it. And then we also have someone who can actually, get the communication board onto the metal. But of course, everything takes time, and we are raising funds for the cost of that, but it would be wonderful if we could, plan for the fall of this year or before the ground freezes again.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic project. I think what it does is increases accessibility, and we've been looking at making our communities as inclusive as possible, and especially with children with speech delays and even those without. So people who are younger kids, looking at all the types of options and increasing communication in our parks. So I think that's fantastic. And for me, vandalism is always a concern. However, I think here the reward outweighs the risk of that. And if we run down the path of, repeated vandalism, then that will have to be something that we can speak with AHS and High Prairie School Division about what that looks like. I hope there's still some level of decorum and respect in society, that the instances are few and far between. But I definitely think this is a fantastic project. Councillor Adams.
I do like the idea as well. These are great little boards, but I am concerned over who's responsible for it in the long term. My challenges around this is something that town continually takes on as we go, is more and more assets that we're responsible for, which incurs cost in the long run. So my couple points would be, I'd like to understand how we're going to address any unforeseen issues in the future. I'd also like to know what the plan is or how it's going to work that at the end of the usable life of the sign. It doesn't necessarily last for eternity, but it's going to be a long-term one, like you said, with those metal signs. But still, I think we need to have a place or an agreement in place before this kind of thing moves forward. And then my last actual question would be around, well, I guess not my last, my second last. Do you have any plans to expand this further within the community, whether it's at other major parks within town, because we do have the quadrant parks, or into other facilities that have that access where people may not have that or whatever it may be?
Definitely, we see this as a pilot project. So we are, we've designated High Prairie, Slave Lake, and a couple of the other communities that I mentioned. But yes, we would like to see this grow. We would love to see all playgrounds be inclusive. I think we've kind of, where we've chosen is because we know that there's a high percentage of potential users and their particular networks. But that is our goal. Actually, it's part of a larger project in terms of communication access. So, how we've made buildings accessible with wider doorways and elevators and ramps. And so communication access is something that has not been, it's not really as prevalent. We're trying to change that and make that better. So yes, definitely we want to expand, but we are starting small.
Counselor Hughes?
I was ready to make a motion.
Go on with your discussion.
I move that Alberta Health Services work with the Town of Slave Lake administration to place this playground communications board at Sherter Park as soon as we are able. Did I
There's
miss
a motion.
anything?
I think that's the request.
The gist of
Any
it?
further discussion? Counselor Adams?
I would like us to hammer out what we're going to do about our questions that we had around maintenance and end of life plans before we agree to move forward and actually place it. I am in favor of something like this going in, as long as we have those plans in place. I would also like to know if this in some way, I'm wondering what is our policies and or bylaws around parks and placing signs? Can we just do whatever we deem necessary, or is there something in there we got to look at to fix in order to place this?
Alex?
We will look into it. We'll follow up on the questions you have and then we'll bring back a report on what you're asking.
So honestly, I'd like to defer an approval until we have that kind of stuff in place.
So you would like me to amend my motion just to task administration to work with AHS on the details surrounding this project at first, is what you're saying? Don't approve the actual
We have
sign?
to defeat it and then have a new motion?
I don't know.
Oh,
I'm just trying to understand what you're
Yeah,
looking for.
that's what I'm looking for, is to have it changed up. So we're not necessarily approving it right now. I'm in favor of doing it, absolutely,
So
but I'd like to have the other stuff. in
You want
place.
them to bring back the details to us and then we'll approve it?
Yeah.
Okay, Ashley would like
Go
to
ahead.
speak.
I just want to confirm, so what maybe just as an option, council could task administration into, looking into this project with Alberta Health Services and then bringing back a report in regards to finances for final approval. So to task us to have an open dialogue, discussion about the project, and then bring back a report addressing for approval for finances.
But
Yeah,
But it won't be
she had already
finances.
covered that the finances, Heather commented that they're raising.
Oh, just in regards to Steve's
ongoing.
question,
Oh,
the maintenance, the ongoing,
maintenance,
not
okay.
the initial cost of the
It's
project.
far,
This is more
far too
complicated than it
complicated
needs to be.
Than putting up a sign,
Yeah.
quite honest. I think,
We've had this happen before with signs.
but the sign gets destroyed and
It's like,
it comes
Okay.
down.
it
And it's
doesn't,
the High Prairie School Division sign, or not the AHS sign. That's the part of, that's the communication. Like I just feel like I don't like policy for the sake of policy and excessive. It's a sign in a playground for accessibility, like I understand that it may be damaged in the future, or when it does damage, it contact AHS and it gets removed. That's the part I'm missing. Councillor Adams.
I understand what you're saying, but I also struggle around the decisions that have made by council in the past to just do something. And then we end up adopting that and it goes forward as an expense nonstop. And then when this gets damaged and we do have to replace it, then we're replacing it at our cost to have it done. Or we're cleaning it up and maintaining it, or we're ripping it out. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm all in favor for this sign. I love this. I love the communication they use in the schools with the iPad and this, and these children can actually communicate in a constructive manner. But for us to just approve something, whatever it may be, for the sake of approving it, because it has a good idea without having a plan in place, I think is a mistake.
So I have a question then, just because while we're going back and forth on this. Alternatively, so we have the permission, they're asking for permission to install the communication board, which to me sounds like the AHS is going to be providing the communication board and doing all those things. So if it comes back that the town does have to be responsible for the upkeep, if there's vandalism and replacement or takedown, if there is to be no funds for replacement, at that point in time, would you be a no? Because if you aren't, then I fail to see moving forward on that. To me, it's a sign, which is a fairly low cost alternative. And if it gets damaged, then it becomes removed. Or we have open conversations with AHS and the High Prairie School Division about what we're going to do about that. So I'm just looking at this from the alternative, because to task administration to bring back a report, if the answer is going to be the same, regardless of what that report says, doesn't make sense in my brain. Councillor Adams.
You don't necessarily know what the answer is going to be. My point is, why would we make any decision without knowing what the cost is? Whatever it may be. So you're saying whatever the cost is, we're going to move forward with this.
I'm saying they're asking for permission to install the sign.
Yeah.
They're providing the sign. They're installing it.
Okay, but you're fine with us ripping it out, manpower to clean it up, whatever the case may be, it's well used. We're going to pay for it now going forward.
I have no problem with removing a sign if the asset becomes damaged, but it's one kind
So
of.
why wouldn't we figure this out before we move forward with it? They say, yes, we're going to be in charge of replacing this down the road, or yes, we commit to removing this sign if it becomes a problem with vandalism and whatever else, or we're responsible for cleaning up and maintaining it. If that's the case, then great, let's go. If not, then we got to be willing to accept the fact that we're going to pay for this. And if you're willing to accept the fact that we're paying for this ongoing, that's fine, then go to a vote and away we go.
And my question was, is your answer going to change if we have to pay for it?
Depends what it would cost. I don't know what it would cost.
Well, in reality, a sign's not going to cost $100,000 to take down.
It's going to be significant cost to replace that sign.
But we don't.
So
have
It's not cheap.
We do have a parks maintenance budget. I think the cut and dried is they supply it, they install it. If it gets damaged beyond usage, we would take ownership of it once it's installed and we would just remove it.
We don't have a parks budget to speak of since we lost our photo radar and all.
We do have a
that
small
stuff.
parks
So
maintenance budget
we have
to
a
look after
small-
some of our things, and we're talking about removing the sign, so.
Sorry, Heather, I missed the.
She would like to speak, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that, Heather. The screen's up here, so I'll give you the opportunity to weigh in after arguing back and forth.
Thank you. I just had a question regarding, I guess I wanted to know, is there a precedent of huge costs when there's vandalism and signs are taken down? And I was just curious what, in the past, has this been a huge issue? What was the cost of removing something?
Go ahead, Councillor Adams.
It's been an issue in the past. We've had signs that have been vandalized and they look horrible for a long period of time before they either get burnt down or they're removed. What I'm trying to do is just question, what's the plan? If we have a plan in place, I'm fine with it. If your plan is we have no plan and it's going to be on the town, then I just want to know that the town has that and understands that before we move forward and suddenly we're left in 6 months holding up our hands going, well, who's fixing that obscene sign on there now?
Mhm.
I
Yeah, and
just asking for clarification in who's responsible for what. And then that way it's clear, it's cut, and we move forward without any issues in the future.
Yeah, and I certainly, I don't think those of us involved were presuming that there's any, because we're not asking for funds. And I understand your question is around funds for removing it if it needed to be removed. So we were not presuming that the town council would have to be, responsible for removing it. But what I will do actually, in terms of, I can certainly try and find out what other jurisdictions have done when that's been an issue. If that would be helpful, because it's not, vandalism certainly happens and graffiti happens. I don't think the risk is any higher with our sign than is typical, but I don't know what's typical for Slave Lake.
Councillor Tobin, did you have a comment or?
Mine's pretty much similar to what Councillor Adams was talking about. I think for me, it's understanding also who's responsible. So say, for example, it comes up, we have great reviews from our community about it, and a couple of weeks down the line, someone goes and vandalizes the sign. Who's responsible for, again, maintaining that sign, but also maybe changing and bringing a new one back to the community because we've received it good reviews? Like who's going to be responsible for some of those things that we could potentially see in the near future, and just trying to iron that out before we step fully into this. I'm 100% in support of this. I think anything that will increase accessibility and create inclusivity in our community should be welcomed with open arms, and that's where I am. And my colleagues are there as well. But I think some of these details need to be ironed out. Yeah.
I will continue on with, before we vote on Councillor Hugh's motion as it stands. I think we're making it far too complicated. I think permission is fairly simple. And from there, we can work up an agreement that is necessary. You have permission to put up the sign. It obviously has to fit within our signage bylaws because that's the requirements. We don't have to provide any funding. It goes up. It's the same thing as parks equipment that has an occasional, vandalism and it gets cleaned up. And if the sign is damaged, well, then we remove it. And I can't see this being an absolutely massive issue for a sign, especially for the ones that are presented in the pictures there. Most of those are attached to fences. They're metal signs, fairly low risk. Anyways, that's my 2 cents there, but Councillor Hughes does have a motion on the floor. So is there any further discussion on her motion to approve, to give permission to this? As I see none, I will. Oh, go ahead, Councillor.
Just one final comment. If this isn't planning to be installed until September, why are we rushing this through without having the discussion first?
Well, there's discussion now, and my personal belief, which isn't changing, is that government takes a long time to do a lot of things because we get caught up in details about something as simple as a communication tool as a sign. And I think that getting weighed down in details like this is what is holding up government on a variety of levels. And I believe, again, and this is my opinion, that the reward versus the risk of the vandalism on this sign is very minimal. So that is my response to that. And as I see no further discussion, Councillor Hughes' original motion was to provide permission. I will call to question those in favor. All those opposed, and that is defeated. The tie, and a tie is defeated. Are there any further motions that anyone would like to make? Councillor Adams.
I'd like to make a motion that administration looks into further expenses, talks to AHS about responsibility and comes up with that plan, and then brings us back to town council in the form of report so we can go from there.
Can we get a date that you would like that to come back by?
What's achievable for administration and for AHS?
Then
30 days would probably work.
perfect. So we'll add that on there.
So first meeting of March,
Yes.
first meeting of March.
Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Heather, any other comments before we let you go for the evening?
No, but I thank you for, it was a fulsome discussion and thank you for allowing me to present and I appreciate the questions and comments and support. So will there be some kind of formal communication with me, just in terms of what information you're wanting to get?
Yes, administration will reach out for any details that they require from you for this. And our CAO and executive director will get a hold of you with regards to that.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Anything for question period from council? Okay, as I see none. Kim, State of Lake, you had something?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that the Town of Slave Lakes Frost Fest is kicking off this coming Saturday. There is a program guide that is available on our social media as well. So there's lots of really great family events, lots of things going on in our area, most weekends here in February. So please make sure that you check that out. And I also wanted to highlight an event that's going on February 15th. It is the Sled Drags racing event by the Slave Lake Snow and Mud Association. So that will be a great kind of local thing to go check out with the family as well.
Councillor Choba.
February is Black History Month, and the Afro Carry Association of Slave Lake are celebrating their Black History Month on the 22nd of February. It'll be at the Legacy Center. More info to follow, but come and join the society to celebrate Black heritage and culture within our community. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hughes,
Motion to go into closed session.
motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried. Counselor Adams,
Motion to adjourn?
any further discussion? Call to question those in favor. And that is carried.